If you want to see the progress on this Pan That palette project, then stick around. All right, let's get this out of the way before we begin. If you like the contents of this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the content on this channel in general, please consider subscribing. That would be wonderful. All right, we are getting into this bad boy. Now, this palette is my official 2019 Pan That palette, but given how long it takes to pan a palette, I decided to crack into it in early October. We are right now November 8th at the time of the filming, and I wanted to show you a little bit about what was going on in this palette. Now, there is a brush that comes with this palette, and I am finding I'm having trouble using it because what I'm using these shadows for is to set my makeup. And I find it too dense and hard to fluff all over my eyelid once I've put my primer on. And so I'm using a much fluffier brush in this palette. I thought I would show you what I'm using. And I obviously have not put my makeup brushes away from having done this eye look today. Speaking of palettes, if you're curious, I've got the Naked Heat on, scorched on the outer lid, and I really quite like the look. Anyway, so here is what it looks like. This is the brush I'm using, and it allows me to grab product and just fluff it very gently over my entire eye without tugging on it. Whereas the Smashbox brush, I think that when you're trying to set, it's very dense, and when you're trying to set powder in a specific spot, not bad, but just really not a good brush for kind of setting the lid. So I'm going to put that brush aside, and I highly recommend, if you don't have a fluffy crease brush, I highly recommend it, especially if you tend to set your eye primer. Here is the palette. And you will notice that there is a pan that is empty. That pan is my own klutzy self. What happened was that I dropped this palette. I was having it back here upright like this, and over time it fell twice, and it always fell on the same corner, and which is really weird because it broke on the other side. It kept falling on this corner, but I guess maybe it was slamming down this way onto the floor. So it cracked once by a third, and then it cracked again by another third, and then it was just leaving, and I'm still getting black eyeshadow here and there. It kept spewing black shadow. I had to clean my floor 3 times. I got sick of it, so I actually got rid of the rest of the black eyeshadow in here. There's no way I was going to use this black eyeshadow anyway. Black eyeshadow takes forever to use. I barely ever use it. I'll use it as a little bit of liner, but I mean, I'm not going to keep a palette for a black eyeshadow, put it that way. I've got black eyeshadow coming out my ears. So I just decided to get rid of it. Now, let's go to what I did use. So I started off using vanilla and decided to stop doing that because it was the biggest pan, one of the 2 biggest pans in the palette, and I really needed to feel progress. I still go into vanilla. I went into vanilla today, and the other one that is wheat. This one is wheat. I go into those 2 colors as needed, but I'm not focusing on them. I wanted to focus on a smaller pan so that I could feel like I'm making some progress. And I think that early on, that's based on what I've seen from other videos, that's an important thing. So instead, I decided to focus on Buff, this color right here. And I think that if I turn the pan, hopefully with enough shadow, you can see the dip. I'm really hoping you can see the dip because it was a lot of work to get that dip. And I can't tell in the viewfinder if you can see it, but to me it's like there's, I would say somewhere between 15 and 20% of that pan, and that is with daily use. And I feel comfortable saying that I can pan a palette over, you know, whatever it is, 15 months, pan most of the pans, just because of how quickly I go through another eyeshadow, and I'd like to show you what I mean. Got my nice Tarte magnetic palette here. It's my favorite type of palette, which is why I keep getting more. Okay, so here's the shadow I'm talking about. It is the Beauty Amplifier priming powder. So the idea being that you put this powder on your eyelid before you use any other shadows. And I don't know, I'm just going to bring it closer. Don't know if it really came through. So hopefully you can see it's. Do you see the ring already? This is the second one I go through, and this is a lot more product by what I can see than the pan in one of these shadows. And so if I have been able to, this one I'm almost at pan, and I've panned another one completely. This is 0.07 or ounces or 2 grams. This is 2 grams, and this palette has 14 shadows and it's 14 grams. So the average is 1 gram per shadow. So obviously if I've been able to use 3 grams of this stuff, let's say, I should be able to make decent progress in this palette. So that is what I'm thinking. And so yeah, I've been working on, I guess you could say, 3 colors. I have also used a tiny bit of grounded and also a tiny bit of tonal up here. So I have used a few other colors, but definitely buff. In the order that I've used them, buff, vanilla, and wheat are the 3 that I've used the most so far. And like I said, the black was an unfortunate victim. But like I said, I'm not sad about it because that's definitely not a color I would have gone for. And in the introduction to this palette, I did identify that I would not necessarily try to pan all the colors, but that there are a number of colors in here that I know that I could use to set my makeup. So I have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, if not 5 shadows that I could use for sure. And once in a while, I have an eye look where I can use, unless I'm doing a focus on a specific brand, I have an eye look in mind where I could do a transition color with one of these without changing the outcome of the eye look. And when that is the case, I do go into this palette because the transition color at the end doesn't even show, usually in the looks I'm making. So this palette, just because it is so basic, matte, kind of boring, it works really well, in my opinion, for my purposes, my style of doing makeup. It was the perfect pan that palette choice. And there are other reasons I gave in my intro along with these, you know, as far as why I wasn't so super jazzed about it. And so I'm really happy. I'm really happy with my first month. I had a lot of trepidation, but I think I am well on my way to make good use of this palette for the rest of the year and into the next one. If you have a pan that palette project, I would love to hear which palette it is and why. And if you don't have one, I am curious to know if you would ever consider trying to pan a palette. Because a year ago, I would have told you flat out no, that I was not interested in trying. But then you find the right palette sometimes and you're ready to go. So I am very curious to see what my update will be for you for next month. But until then, I say take care, and I will see you in the next video.